This is, well, first of all, we get information from you about what your primary concerns are. Now, there are some generic things that we always do, and those are the things I've talked about: the endocrine system, the connective tissue, the overall embryonic cells, and that, everything we've talked about. But then we can get specific. If you have a family history of heart disease, you have active diabetes, we will choose cells that support that. But there is also an overall whole embryo serum that does address, literally, every organ of the body.
And how many times will that have to be injected?
Depending on the purpose of your coming. If it's purely to stay as well as you can, look as good as you can, as long as you can, I have a lot of people that repeat it about once a year. It's not necessary. It's not going to stop working at any point that makes it necessary to do it that very time. But that is a good rule of thumb, because a lot of our soft tissue renews itself annually, so you could look at it philosophically as you're a new person every year. And of course, aging goes on. And we don't pretend that we have cured everything, that we have made every correction to the genetic code there is. And so every time you get it, it's cumulative. So some people have it once a year. Other people come to us with an acute problem. They've had surgery, they've had an accident, they've had some kind of a health setback. They're not really into the anti-aging thing. And so they will have it one time to kind of get their health back, their strength back. We see that a lot. It's not a treatment, I want to make clear, for a primary treatment for disease. And we have a number of patients with cancer. So we always say we treat patients with cancer but not for cancer. And I don't mean to split hairs here. It's just that we need to know that they're pursuing another more primary treatment for what they do, whether it's alternative or whether it's traditional. Cell therapy can work with it. It's never either or. I'm never going to say to somebody, you can't do what your doctor's saying, you have to do this instead. Never, never, never. It always works complementary with other therapies. The timing can be important as to how it's used with other therapies, but it always is compatible. So if someone's coming to us for that, they just want to get well, and so we'll see them through that, or if they're pleased with the results, they may continue to come back. They may continue to come back, but it's not set in stone. Everyone's an individual.
Is there an immediate reaction?
People say all the time, how fast does this work? Well, technically, I can tell them for a fact it works within 60 to 90 minutes, because those cells are where they need to be. But we're injecting what looks to you when you see your syringes lined up like a lot of material, but it's really just a drop in a bucket in terms of your body size. So we're relying on time. We make these corrections. It sets up a faster cell duplication rate. And then, as I said, 2 makes 4, makes 16, and so forth. So the profound effects that you feel might be several months down the line.
The last time I was down there, Judy, and I hadn't been for about 3 years. I got busy, as you know, and I traveled a lot. I went every year before that for a long time. And in 2 weeks, I noticed right away.
Well, you do.
And then that one time in Nassau, years ago, Tom had done some kind of addition, juvenile hormone or something.
Yeah, we did.
And Randy and I were running around the block like marathon runners that day.
I've seen it all. And, I never say never. I'm looking for the results down the line. That is what we would expect to happen. But I do see people have immediate responses. I think a lot of that, the first things to respond, I think, are the anti-inflammatory effects. You feel better, you feel more energetic, you're out of pain a little bit, and that does tend to come a little bit faster. The skin texture changes tend to come a little bit faster. Yes, ma'am?
Why don't you have a clinic in the United States?
That's a good question. Yes, because it's not allowed in the United States. That's the law. It is not disapproved. It is not addressed by our FDA. And there's, you can hear as many reasons for that as there are people. I am not of the conspiracy crowd that really thinks they're just trying to keep all good things from us. I think I have reasonable people who believe that. But basically, it falls through the cracks with our pharmaceutical industry. As I mentioned in the beginning, it's been done for 30 to 40 years. It is in the public domain. It is not patentable. It begins with an animal product. There's just a gazillion reasons pharmaceutical houses aren't interested. They also would have to test each one individually. It's not an antibiotic for an infection. It is 100 and some odd, list of things I can order. They want each one tested, each one double tested in combination. It would be a multi-billion-dollar proposition and not a patentable product at the end. So I think it just is not, it falls through the cracks pretty much in terms of it being reasonable. Yes, ma'am?
Is the injection
something that would be safe for someone who has a compromised immune system?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, it would be advisable for someone with a compromised immune system.
Like,
Absolutely.
let's say somebody who has to take prednisone and their immune system is
Mhm.
suppressed.
Right. Now, as long as they're on something that is continuing to suppress it, it's a constant, battle. But we have seen people with very depressed immune systems, and that's something you can measure because those white cells change on a daily basis. There are different rates of cell division in our bodies. Soft tissue, as I mentioned, tends to renew once a year. Our nerves very slow. They used to say not at all, but now they know that they do. But the white cells, the immune function cells, on a daily basis, you can measure your white cells 36 hours after cell therapy and see that there's a better distribution. So it is a good thing. But again, if there's a disease process that's depressing the immune system, or if you're on a pharmaceutical that's depressing it,
You have a lot of HIV people.
we have a number of HIV people, we do, and we tend to get good results. We've taken some people, and again, not a cure. I don't want to, in any way, shape, or form sound like I'm selling a miracle in a syringe here. It's not a cure, but we can help to support their immune system when they're in crisis and bring it up and get them out of danger in terms of, meeting an infection. Yes, sir?
Do you have any treatments for stability and mobility of legs, feet and legs?
When it's neuropathy primarily,
Beg pardon?
neuropathy primarily, maybe. We see a lot of neuropathy as a consequence of diabetes, obviously, but there's an awful lot of just, neuropathy with no known cause. And so we treat with nerve cells. Those do regenerate very, very slowly. And we have seen some results with that. When it comes to balance, if it's a matter of balance, the stability in the connective tissue and the muscle, and then some of the brain tissue we use. Let me outline the cells that we use. And there has been a recent pharmaceutical change in the cell preparations that we use. For those of you who've been down before, it's a big change. For those of you for whom it's new, it's the same old thing. But there are systems. In the very early days when we started out, we were working with what was called lyophilized cells. The progression pharmaceutically of these cells went from live cells, which I discussed, through a period at Dr. Nahans, before the end of his career, developed a program of lyophilization, which just means freeze drying. But what that did is it took all the moisture out of the cell and shrunk it down to a manageable size. Did a lot of things in terms of improving the safety of it, because it removed all the extracellular material, which is when a cell is in a living state, there's an intake of nutrients and waste products are being removed, and there's a lot of extracellular junk, more or less, going on. Well, a lot of that's foreign protein. So when you lyophilize the cell, you have removed all of that, shrunk the cell, made it an easier treatment, a non-surgical treatment, and that's where we came into the game. In the early 80s, we were using lyophilized cells. Now the cells are called ultrafiltrates, and what they've done is filtrated it down to just the genetic portion of the cell. The other parts of the cell are extremely important for the life of the cell, but therapeutically, we're only interested in the genetic code, the RNA, DNA of the cell itself. So now they have it down to that, and it naturally breaks in these smaller sequence the way the RNA goes out and builds new cells. So that has removed all danger from the treatment, because there's no longer protein in nature. Nano-sized particles makes for much better absorption. We can get billions and billions and more cells in a reasonable size injection, and it's very, very safe. So, I'm sorry?
Where are they produced?
They're produced in Germany for the most part, always in Europe. But Germany is, when my husband went to the University of Vienna, those were the cells they were using. Originally, when we first started, we were buying them from Clinic La Prairie. They also produce their own cells. They have the wherewithal. They have their own pharmaceutical house.
I'm curious, though, I know it's not covered by any medical insurance, approximately what would a series cost?
Oh, I can tell you exactly. It's $3,200 for a new patient. And that is the first time you have the treatment. Now, a little background on this. When we first started, we also encourage a nutritional program. We give nutritional advice, but frankly, most of our people, we're so blessed, come to us on that kind of a track. These are people who are doing everything they know to do to stay as well as they can. They exercise. We don't get people who drink to excess. We don't get smokers for the most part. And so, you know, we're, again, you know, we're preaching to the choir and that kind of thing, but we do make specific nutritional recommendations to people that will help them get the best from cell therapy. So we had thought originally, knowing how it was done in Europe, and sort of rebelling against that very expensive, you have to have it every year sort of philosophy, we started out with, we're going to do it once, we're going to tell you how to live right, and then you'll be fine. And that was our attitude. We found out that actually this goes back to some animal studies that my husband was part of at the University of Vienna, where he was taken into the animal lab and shown 3 rows of animals. And of course, what do you see? He said, I see the young animals, I see the middle-aged animals, and I see the older animals. He was told, no, these are arranged, you know, horizontally, not vertically. These are sibling animals. The first ones had been not treated at all. So the first ones, the young animals, were the ones who had cell therapy all through their life periodically. What he called middle-aged animals had been treated once and then kept on the same program. I mean, they all had the same exercise opportunity, the same diet, and so forth. Then what they were calling the old animals were the control group that had not had it at all. What the point they were trying to make was that boosters are necessary. Time goes on, aging goes on, these random mistakes go on. And they were trying to gently tell him, don't think you're so smart that, you know, you can put people on a program that's going to keep them, you know, young forever. So we came back from that, and my husband said, well, gosh, I've already told people they don't need boosters. This is embarrassing. So what he decided to do was to just make a price structure so that people who were pleased with their treatment could continue it at a cost basis. So what I'm getting around to when he asked your question, it is exactly, I can tell you, it's $3,200 for the primary treatment, and then the booster treatment is just the cost of the serum and very unavoidable expenses, and that runs $2,200. And that's how we run the clinic. That's how we've managed to do it. Yes.
Yeah, I have thyroid removed, and 12 years ago, Dr. Thomas staff out of the DC area told me about this, and he told me if I went to Switzerland and had an injection initiated every 6 months, so I would not need to take thyroid replacement medication. Is that what it is? And also, my brother has type 1 diabetes, but it also be effective for him. Can you just get a...
It is. Now, in terms of a total thyroid removal, my experience is, I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you, when an organ, okay, we're talking about when there is a total thyroid removal. She was told by a doctor that if she went to Switzerland and had these injections periodically, she would not have to take thyroid medication. My experience, honestly, when an organ has been completely removed, more often than that, I see hysterectomies. I see ovaries that are completely removed. When you inject the cells, they, as I said, they migrate to the target organ. There's nowhere for them to, quote, land. If there's a part of that organ left, yes. But when it's completely removed, okay, I've seen it. I philosophically don't know how that happens. But it does. Now with type 1 diabetes, definitely. We would use the whole body cells. This is when we treat people younger than would be interested in, you know, age control. But when we see, you know, juvenile diabetics, we still give the whole treatment because, again, I don't think he's just a child or a young man with a bad pancreas, so to speak. It is the whole endocrine system that's affected, which is why it ultimately affects the blood vessels and the nerves and, you know, myopathies and the neuropathies because of the high blood sugar levels. So we still, even if it's a young person, treat the whole body, treat the whole endocrine system, but then we would concentrate much more heavily on the insulin-producing cells. And again, not to get too technical, but we would treat with the whole pancreas because there is another portion of the pancreas called the glucagon-producing that counterbalances. And very often it is not a lack of insulin, but an overproduction of glucagon. So, you know, we don't try to be so smart that we think we know what's going on. We'll treat with the whole thing and try to balance the system.
It can't hurt you, right?
Cannot hurt. That's the one thing I want to stress about cell therapy. It is very, very safe. It can never cause further harm. That would be my first concern. We do test very carefully for allergy. That did happen with the old lyophilized cells. With ultrafiltrates that, because they're not protein in nature, they technically cannot produce an allergic response. It should not be possible. But still, it takes 5 minutes. What we do is we withdraw a little bit of everything you're getting, do a subcutaneous injection on your forearm, and within 5 minutes we would know if you're sensitive. So if you're 1 in a million and we run into you one of these days, you know, we'll know. But other than that, it can cause no further harm. It can only help the extent to which it helps. We're still mortal. You know, we're not here to say I can keep you 25 forever and you'll never be sick and never die. That's not the truth, but we can manage age. We don't need to, you know, technically you reach full maturity at about 25, 26 years. They technically say 25 years, 8 months. Hold that homeostasis for a while, and then it's a slow decline, and it's you know, and you can tell people who, at about 50, who started taking care of themselves at a younger age and watching what they eat and, you know, doing the best thing. At that age, you know, there's a great divide. You either have another 20, 30 years of very active life in a healthy old age, or you start a rather rapid decline. So, you know, we're blessed to have the kind of people who are trying to do what they can do to stay, feel as good as they can. There's a lot to do. Yes, ma'am.
I had 2 or 3 questions. Susan Summers, instead of having a facelift, she had cell therapy. Was that the stem cell?
Yes, well, yes.
Not the one you're giving.
She has had both. If you've read her new book, I mean, I don't know that she's had both. I don't want to claim that on her behalf, but she talks about both. I know she's had the stem cell facelift because she talks about it.
And would that be injected into your face?
Yes, it is. There is a difference between, definitely a difference between the two. We don't do any cosmetic work. Our folks tend to look better and have better skin texture and better connective tissue in general, but it is not the same as a facelift. Now, if I can address what Suzanne has in her book, the stem cell work that she talks about is what we're doing. The cell therapy that she talks about in her book is what we're doing. She talks about Dr. Jonathan Wright, who's a big proponent of cell therapy, and she quotes him a lot in the book, has a whole chapter on what we do in her book.
Are those animal cells?
They are still animal cells. They will always come from animals. And let me explain the
what
reasoning.
If the animal has a disease that you don't know? Like people sometimes are harboring diseases and they don't know they are getting it until they get it. But what if the animal is doing the same thing? Because, and the other question is, are animal cells the same as human cells?
At that stage of gestation, they are, yes. And that is why animals are used. That's why the black mountain sheep, originally because they were so hardy and not likely to be ill, but now they're pharmaceutically handled. It's a pharmaceutical herd, and they're 24/7 monitored by veterinarians.
Yeah, because animals can get cancer too. Chickens can get cancer.
But these are the ones that are monitored, and of course we're only dealing with the embryo and the fetus,
And
not
will
the
we
adult.
start baying like a sheep?
People ask me all the time, well, I get curly hair. I mean, I get it all, you know. Yeah. No, they're very safe, and it's the very reason you don't use human cells, because you can't farm people like you can animals. You cannot know their genetic history, know their predispositions.
But with the facelift, I'm thinking, how do they know that those cells won't pop out in big lumps on your face? I mean, how do they know they'll just contour to your face?
Well, the same way a good plastic surgeon knows, where and how to do that. The cells in stem cell facelift, that's not what we do. I know a little bit about it, but I just want to make it clear that's not what we do. Suzanne Summers does talk about that.
I'm sorry, I thought
but it's called autologous, and these are cells that are taken from your body, extracted from fat. They're spun down for the stem cells.
What she
has. We all have stem cells all of our life. We just have fewer of them as we age. And so your fat cells are taken in a tiny little liposuction, not enough to make it worthwhile, but enough to get some fat cells, and spun down for the stem cells and combined with a little bit of that fat, and then combined also with protein, with plasma that is platelet enhanced, platelet rich protein they call it. It's spun down, condensed with the platelets. This more or less in the depressions in your face, but the difference is it will not, the filler is unnatural and it ultimately will dissolve and be absorbed. The stem cells will continue to grow, again, because they're non-specific.
But even fillers, sometimes I've seen Jaja and a few other
if
people,
it's done badly,
they
it's
get
not good.
like lumps.
Yeah, if it's not done
Hard
well,
little
that can
lumps.
happen. Yeah, and I'm sure stem cell therapy can be done badly, but you
That's
want
what
to
I
know who you're
mean,
going
yeah,
to.
you
It's a
don't know.
good treatment, though. I think the days of in cosmetic surgery, the days of up before long. I think they'll primarily be using the more natural.
Thank you.
Yeah, for our clinics. The closest one here would be in Tijuana. I will be, if anyone's interested in more information, as I said, please sign my book and I'll send it to you, the registration materials. But I go to Tijuana several times a year. I have a set schedule between Tijuana and Nassau. I will be in Tijuana next, February 9th and 10th. And it takes me about 6 weeks to get the cells, so I need some advanced registration. Know that you're coming, know what your concerns are, and then cells are ordered for you. And the next opportunity would be February 9th and 10th. Anyone who's interested, I'll have the whole schedule for 2013 sent to them. Yes?
They all have your CDs.
Oh, yes. What you have on your chairs there, that is just, as I said, I do radio more than I do live speaking. This was a radio show from someone here locally in Los Angeles named Lisa Garr. Some of you may listen to her show. She has a wonderful show called The Aware Show. And she has on alternative medicine, but more in line with, with other interests. But I was on her show, and she did a particularly good job. I didn't say anything particularly brilliant, but she did a really good job of asking questions in a sequential way so that people understood from the get-go, what is it, how'd you get into it, where do I get it, what does it do? And then she had an answer, a question and answer period. And it really made sense at the end of it. Very often I do radio shows where people just fire questions at me, why isn't it done in the United States, and where do the cells come from, and all the questions people want to know, but there's no sequence to it. At the end, I don't think people understand what it is. I'm sorry, yes ma'am?
If you go for this treatment, you have to stay overnight?
No, you can come and go. It is an outpatient treatment. If I was down the block from you, you could come and go. Thanks for coming. You could come and go in a day, in an afternoon. The fact that you have to cross the border is the time-consuming thing. But there is no downtime. I do think when it's new to someone, I'm thinking of myself, I would feel more comfortable being where we are. So if a question occurred to you, and if it happens to be Tijuana, it is a lovely hotel, and we do encourage people if they want to spend the night there to do so.
Well, it's the American Clinic.
We use the American Biodental Clinic, and it is on the lobby level of the Grand Hotel Tijuana, which is a beautiful place.
I just parked my car in that guarded parking lot in San Diego.
That's what we do.
And your people picked me up. They took me over there. I had my injection.
Yes.
And patches on my butt. And then I got back in the limousine, and they took me through the medical lane back.
We do. We pick you up on the San Diego side. I know Tijuana has a terrible reputation. The area that we're in is really very safe. It's a lovely area, but nevertheless, we don't want you to get lost in Tijuana. So we pick you up on the U.S. side. A lot of our people don't come from this area. I just saw people yesterday from Australia, Canada, all over the place. So they're flying in. If you fly in, we'll pick you up at the airport. If you drive in, we'll pick you up at this guarded parking lot that's right at the border. A lot of people from LA take the train. We'll pick you up at the train station.
I did used to enjoy going to Nassau because
Nassau's
even though it took a few hours at the clinic, we always stayed at a wonderful hotel on the ocean. We spent 2 days just relaxing.
It is. Of all the clinics we have, that is the nicest. If you want to make a little vacation out of it, it takes a couple days coming
Are
and going.
there people that are here now that have had it that are going to come up and tell?
They're welcome to
Talk
if
to
anybody
us.
wants to say anything. Yeah, as I said, I so appreciate everybody that's
Why don't
come.
you have everybody stand up?
Okay, if you want to, because this is a private clinic and you're under no obligation to say you've had the treatment. None. None at all.
25 times.
And look at it. You're not, it's, because, and believe me, I appreciate that and their willingness to say so, but we are a private medical clinic. I would never say, without their permission that someone can come down. Yes, ma'am. Okay, that's a good question. Do the sheep have to be killed? Because I was a vegetarian for ethical reasons, not even for health reasons, because I'm an animal lover and I'm no happier about that than anybody. The embryo, obviously, the embryo is destroyed, but the ewe is actually a very valuable pharmaceutical animal, and they
Is
are
that
not
from the
destroyed.
baby sheep, the embryo?
The embryo is an embryonic, fetal sheep.
So that's right after the sheep is born?
No, right after it's conceived, actually. They're taken very early on.
It's before it has a male or female,
What
right?
treatments does a person need?
I don't understand.
Depending on the nature of what your concerns are.
You showed acne before.
Okay, this would be primarily Danae's. When we're working with skin, we give skin cells that will improve skin texture. When it comes to damaged skin, scar tissue, we refer back to someone like Danae, because, you know, there is a good complementary action between topical treatments and what we do. What we do will help the skin turn over faster, new skin cells build, but if you have scar tissue, if you have acne problems, if you have anything like that, then you want to go to someone who specializes in the topical treatments as well.
So you do a facelift out of that?
Oh, it's not the same as a facelift. No, ma'am. We do not do cosmetic work. All your injections are going to go right here. If they migrate to the various areas. So when we give skin cells, I'm not even specially giving face skin cells. Your skin texture will improve all over your body. You will have skin of a younger, you're back, good. You will have skin of a younger age, but not necessarily in your face, not necessarily. It will help to fill out the connective tissue, the cartilage, all that will fill out. But again, if you have excessive crow's feet or something, I tend to smile with my eyes. I have them all the time. And so, you know, it helps with that, but I still go to a good esthetician.
So how much would you say a person needs to spend to get the full value of what you're offering? And
you can't spend any more with us than $3,200. I won't take it. That's all we do. So cell therapy is, you know, what we do. Now we do refer you to other people if there are other concerns, but all we do is cell therapy, and it's $3,200.
redo it.
I'm sorry?
Does it wear out?
It does not wear out. It does not. You're not Cinderella where at any point it stops working. These are cells that will continue to reproduce themselves, but aging goes on as well, and so does free radical changes in oxidation and ultraviolet radiation. So most of our patients do repeat. At any given clinic I have, about 75% of them are repeat patients, or what we call boosters. And by booster, I don't mean qualitatively or quantitatively less, it's just that price structure I told you about. So about 75% of the people at any given clinic will be back for a repeat treatment. On any schedule they choose. Some come once a year. A few choose to come more than that. It is cumulative. I always am cognizant of the reason we're in this, and that was to make it available at a reasonable price. So I'm very cognizant of the expense and the difficulty. So I seldom recommend it more than once a year. But we do have people that come about every 6 months for a year or two and then trail off to once a year, once every 18 months. And it depends too on when you started. If you're in your 30s, you know, you can space it out to every 2 to 3 years. There's nothing written in stone. If you start it when you're older, then, you know, it's going to take a little bit more to roll it back, and then you might be happy doing it once a year or once every couple of years. Yes, ma'am?
Are there any cells targeting hypertension, the blood vessels?
Yes, I can actually give artery cells, but we don't give them alone. We give them because hypertension can be caused by kidney problems, it can be caused by atherosclerosis. You know, we're not in the business of necessarily diagnosing because we're going to treat the whole body. If you come to us, though, and tell us that you have a hypertension caused by atherosclerosis, then I'm going to deal primarily with the heart and artery cells, but we're also going to make recommendations as to dietary changes, and supplements would be extremely important. Extremely important. There are certain supplements that we always recommend to people that are anti-aging by nature. We always want to reduce the inflammation. We always want to reduce the oxidative stress. So when new things come out in the literature, I do keep an eye on it. That's what I do. And I'll send out a newsletter about new things. There's one new nutrient that some people may or may not be aware of. It's called PQQ. I don't know how many of you have run into that, but it is similar to coenzyme Q10, which I guess a lot of people have been taking. Okay, so the PQQ is pyrrole quinoline quinone, which isn't important except that the quinone part is the same as the CoQ10. That's also a quinone. The purpose of that nutrient is to protect the DNA from oxidative damage. PQQ specifically protects the mitochondria of the cell from oxidative damage. The mitochondria is the little energy factory in your cell. It's what turns food into real and usable energy. Mitochondria have a DNA, which means that they do reproduce themselves. So the good news is you're not born with a set amount and then you decline with age. You can encourage them to reproduce themselves, and you can protect them from oxidative damage. So there are some specific nutrients that are very important to what we do. And that brings to mind another thing. When we were talking about the cells that we use, I'm constantly updating the cells. I mean, I stay on top of the research as much as I can. I stay on top of the nutritional research as much as I can. But the one thing change that I've made recently is I am using intestinal cells, intestinal mucosal cells with everybody. And again, this is on top of the whole body, the endothelium, the connective tissue and everything. But I am special ordering these from Germany. I'm having them handmade for us because they're not available in the standard, sort of list of what I can order. But the reason I think it's so important is that the intestinal tract it produces, we know from yogurt commercials how important it is to our immune system. I mean, we've all learned that. So it is very fundamental to your immune system. It produces 95% of your serotonin, which, we all know how many people are being treated for depression and they're on serotonin-sparing drugs. Not a thought given to their digestive tract. If you work with the intestinal mucosa and you can improve the serotonin production there, it solves, essentially solves a problem better than any pharmaceutical could begin to solve. It also is involved with our cognitive development. So it is something that protects your immune function, your cognitive development, your emotional stability, not to mention intestinal problems. You only need to watch television to see how many people have irritable bowel and, and gas and GERD and heaven knows what, digestion, and take a pill so you don't get indigestion, take a pill after you get indigestion. Everybody's got it. So I have had these special cells made, and again, our protocol is a little different than any other cell therapy, and I'm not taking issue with anyone else's cell therapy. We just do it as well as we know how to do it. It's the best decisions I can make on that, and we always use intestinal cells. Yes, ma'am.